Hey everyone, welcome back to Conversations in Pop Culture, and we are back in the saddle once again. And I have with me comic creator and publisher Randy Zimmerman. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. Great to
No,
be here.
I am excited. I am excited because you've been around forever in comics,
Ever, yes,
and then you got a long history and
long.
very, very interesting aspects from both the publishing side, graphic design, some newspaper stuff, as well
Oh
as
yeah,
your career
yep.
own stuff, as well as a publisher and
hmm
with Arrow Comics. And so, what is the whole story of Arrow Comics? Because it's been through so many reiterations. I think it's on 4.0 at this point. And
Well, technically, we took the 4.0 off because it's just a little confusing because it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes and it comes and it goes. If the last three issues of Comics Unlimited that the great Glenn Fleming does, that's an English magazine about comics available over on Amazon, Comics Unlimited. I've been running a series of articles about the history of Arrow Comics. The Arrow started back in '85 as the idea from Ralph Griffith and Stuart Kerr. And I came in as their first guinea pig. Myself and Susan Van Camp did a book for them called Tales from the Anniversary. It was our book. Arrow Comics has always been a creator-owned company. Anything that they print, they never own. Arrow doesn't own anything, but everybody owns their work that are printed under the Arrow Comics banner, and they have complete control over the property. So they could walk at any time, which is what Susan and I ended up doing after issue 6 of Tales from the Anniversary. And then I had an offer to self-publish. So, of course, what behind the ears, I thought I knew better. So I went off and published as Weeby Comics for a little while, and then that folded. And a couple of years later, I come back as Massive, and that didn't that ended after 3 or 4 issues. I did 3 issues of Tales from the End, or 3 more issues of Tales from the Anniversary over there under the Massive Comics banner. But Arrow Comics has always been a philosophy of almost like a communal hub for creators to bring their stuff. And back in the mid to late 90s, I brought Arrow Comics back again with Scott Moore, and we printed a bunch of stuff then. We printed Ralph and Stu also for Dark Oz and Wonderland. We did another Oz series after they were done, and printed a whole slew of material and butted heads with Diamond the entire time, just as Diamond was the only direct distributor at the time. And we just butted heads with them so bad. And we decided to stop. We did a couple of graphic novels because the collections were starting to come in about at that point, so early 2000s. And I got fed up with Diamond, but in between that, all the time while I was self-publishing, I was out there working for any independent company that would hire me. I did lettering here and inking there, and it worked for a lot of people, and self-published a lot of other things, and did a lot of products in between that, and then did Arrow. Then Diamond ended up really driving us up the wall, so I stopped. And then I got to work for a local political paper here called The Uncommon Sense. I was their comic strip editor for a little bit. And I came up with the idea, hey, this would work as a comic paper. Why aren't we doing a comic newspaper and just giving it away? Have the advertisers cover the costs, which we did. I ran that for about 10 years, ran 100 issues, mostly monthly, not all of it. Towards the end, we were bi-monthly. But I'm up here in Flint. It was called Flint Comics and Entertainment. And we weren't stopped by Diamond. We weren't stopped by a distribution problem. We were stopped by a water problem. And advertising ended up drying up for that publication. So after 100 issues and dipping into my savings for the last 3 or 4 of them, just to cover the print bill, it decided it was time to stop. So we stopped at number 100. But in the meantime, I was printing 10,000 copies of this paper, distributing it just within like a 25, 30-mile radius of Flint, and moving thousands of copies. I was getting back a couple hundred all the time, and I wouldn't let the guy who I had a guy distributing who distributes to all of the little freebie publications inside all the restaurants and that. I wouldn't let him recycle the paper. I'd make him drop them off at my house, and then I'd take the readable copies and do conventions and just hand them out. But we
It's
carried
great.
comic strips. I put my own stuff in it as much as possible. All of the my friends that I thought had anything close to quality material, we were running all of them. We ran the Cardinal from Kurt Kulka, which is a great strip. Cynical Man from Matt Fazell, who, if you haven't seen Matt's work, he is the master of mini comics. He's able to take an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and fold it down to into a 4-page little mini comic. And he did the conventions all through the Midwest. Genius with stick figures, and a lot of other folks that I found along the way, and some public domain strips and stories we reprinted, and we had we were running Leo. Leo was a big feature for almost the entire run of the paper, but we were also printing Prince Valiant and Flash Gordon, and it was the first time anybody here in the area had seen either one of those. Now Prince Valiant's covered in our local daily. They run a Prince Valiant strip every Sunday now, but before that they didn't run it. But I think that they took some lead from what we were doing, because the reception was amazing. It really reinstilled my love for comics, is what it did. So when the newspaper had to die or had to stop publication, I was heartbroken. I didn't want to stop, because we had built up a readership base of at least 9,500 people, which is really my pride and joy, honestly. When we stopped the paper, I didn't know what to do, and then I got turned on to YouTube and podcasting and crowdfunding and all of this. Been working my way towards that ever since. Then resurrected Arrow Comics on a deal that went south. We'll just leave it at that. But Arrow Comics is back out now. We were calling it 4.0 for a while, but now it's just straight Arrow Comics. We're printing hybrids from Luke Stone. We're doing a lot of stuff that I've done over the years. There's a lot more stuff coming, because I'm in the middle of like 3 or 4 different projects at once here. It seems all fun. And then we're also starting a sub brand called Arrow 3G, and the 3G stands for guns, gore, and girls, guns, and gore, where we're going to do 90s styles type comics, image circle template era is what I call it. The era of the over exaggerated features, and get back into some of the old fashioned comics that everybody loved to read. Do a bunch of that material. Plus, I've got an angry little monkey that I use as an editorial cartoon called Spank that I printed. There it is, few issues of. That's a notorious cover too. That one is also. But yeah, there's Spank #1. So my latest ad that I'm running for in Arrow for that runs a quote that Wizard magazine gave me that mentioned the fact that anybody what was it? He uses Spanks and mentions monkeys and spanking in the same sentence. It's got to be great, something like that. But it was fun. But yeah, he's my little editorial cartoon. I had been working on a history of comics using those 2 monkeys and another. I have a whole cast of people. And Spank is a retailer, and people come into his shop, and he basically sits down and explains to them why comics are important, why sequential art is an art form that'll never die, that it'll always be out there, because people are always going to be putting words and pictures together, no matter what platform you're on, and how important this industry is, and just how nutball it is as well. So
you just went through a lot of stuff.
It's going to be a big book. Yeah.
So I do want to dive into some of this a little bit that you just went on and spoke about, because obviously now that Arrow is back, and you've obviously done the newspaper stuff, you've done advertising.
Yeah.
What is that like? Because you're obviously more seasoned, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm in the process of adding another SKU to my eBay business at the moment, and it's a hell of a lot easier doing it the second time than it is the first time.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's not as stressful whenever
Right.
you're deploying capital or you're taking a risk, but there is, I guess, less stress sometimes, or there's not risk. I should phrase it. There's still the risk, but it's probably less stressful because you've been around the block.
Yeah.
And so what is that like? Because having the experience and all that stuff matters, and it helps.
Yeah. The big thing with Arrow that I look at is safety in numbers and quality. Everybody As long as we have top-notch quality books, everybody's going to benefit from promoting each other. So let's promote each other. Let's get out there and show folks what we can do, and try to find alternative means of distribution. Try to find ways of getting out there to the public, because that's the real mission here, is getting out to readers. You know, we want to make the retailers happy. If they want to make us happy, we definitely want to make them happy. But our big goal with Arrow Comics is to find people who love comics and give them something to read. That's the whole idea. And if you look at, if you go up to arrowcomics.store, you can see the variety of stuff that we're already offering, and it's just going to get bigger as we go along.
Yeah, let's actually touch upon what you just brought up, because I don't know how you feel, but I'm a big anime guy. I'm a big sci-fi guy.
Sure.
And I've read a lot of good stuff, and I've watched a lot of good anime. I've read a bunch of good comics, and I'm having the problem of finding good product and good things to watch, good things to read, good comics to pick up that I already haven't read. And, you know, I hate to say this, but I'm sort of disillusioned with DC and Marvel right now. And they kind of turned me off with a lot of stuff, you know, lazy writing. Sometimes the art is not good.
Right.
It doesn't help indie.
No.
Because if I'm already upset enough about comics,
doesn't help the industry in general. Yeah.
And so what is this like? Because I'm craving story, and other people are craving story. But I'm also craving good art. I'm craving a good product collectively. And I think that's the problem. And
it is.
It's hard to get me back in a little bit.
Yep.
And so, like, what are you seeing with that? Because,
well, it's one thing I found out with running the paper is that there are people out there desperately looking to be entertained. And the more accessible, the quicker they're going to get entertained. And then the quicker, once they realize you're there, then you've got them. But they have to like what you have to do a high enough quality book for them to keep coming back for more. You can't rely on the continued story, which is what Marvel and DC has done. You can't rely on the variant cover to keep your customer base running. You'll have little individual bumps in sales depending upon who loves who, or who likes who doing whatever cover. But it's not sustaining. It's not going to last very long. And that the art form needs to find a way now to get out there and to stay not only relevant, but to sustain itself through rough economic times or harder times, or there's not a lot of good stuff coming out of Marvel and DC. That's why you're disenchanted. You've seen the quality on both of these companies drop through the floor. But on the other hand, there's so much great stuff coming out there that's crowdfunding, and so much of that stuff isn't being seen enough by enough people, or the retailers aren't standing up and going, I need 5 copies of that because I know I can sell it in my store. They've been so trained to deal only with Marvel and DC and the other exclusives, and dealing with Diamond means that there's no returns. So they have to spend all of this money on product 3 months in advance. I used to retail for a while. I met my wife while I was retailing. That was, I hate to say it, 32 years ago. Just I watched the direct market form. So, and I knew once it narrowed down to Diamond that we were in a sink that was slowly circling the drain, and that eventually there would be these problems, and the bug just helped to amplify those problems that have sprung up. And now we have to find other ways of getting out there and other ways of reaching a readership audience.
So I do want to touch upon that, because obviously what I'm venturing into, and I'm actually running into an issue, is I have an eBay store, and sometimes, you know, on Kickstarter in particular, people allow me to pick up a retail package, and I do okay with it. I'm not getting rich off of it, but if I pick up 10 retail packages and I'm making 30% on it, it's not bad for me in profit. But you know, I'm going to make my, I guess, numbers up in volume, not per book. But sometimes, like, certain people won't let me play in that space, and I find it really, really weird, where I don't even know if it's so much even the retailers, or if it's even just the opposite side of saying, I need to develop my retail package that suits both a comic shop and online comic shops. And I think it's not just the retailer. I also think it's the creator. It has been trained poorly, or hasn't been trained at all. And I think it's a real issue.
Well, the whole industry is in a hardcore state of flux right now because the days of deadlines are probably close to gone, especially when it comes to crowdfunding books. Because not only are there blown deadlines, but there's people that crowdfund books that don't come out for 6 to 8 months or even a year away from their campaigns. That's why you don't see a lot of campaigns from me, because I like to do a campaign with a book that's already done. Then I don't have to worry about it. I'm doing other products, or I'm able to sit and promote the campaign as opposed to worrying about whether or not I'm going to hit a deadline or disappoint a customer. And that should be, it's literally the Wild West right now. It's a testing ground as people are figuring out what works, what doesn't work. And on top of that, the economy and the state of the art are fluxing so much. It's really hard to stay on top of that kind of stuff. But there's stuff out there now that are crowdfunding that you're going to see around 10, 15 years from now, that those very first editions are going to be the ones that are going to be worth a lot of money. And I can't tell you, I don't have a crystal ball in front of me, which products that I would invest in or not invest in. I suppose if I sat and read or followed every campaign, I could give you some pointers, but it's next to impossible to follow all the campaigns from one platform, especially with the crazy shadow banning and the lack of promotion that a lot of these platforms give these products, that it's hard to see what's there until it's come or gone.
I also think that there's a bunch of sleepers.
Absolutely.
I think that there's a bunch of books that are going to have sold 200 copies. And all of a sudden, somebody at Netflix, Disney, Hulu, it's going to be some like intern. It's like, yeah, I read this, and they're going to bring it to their boss. It's going to get a nice promotion.
I think it's going to take a little bit, a few years. But yeah, definitely. I see that happening. Yep.
So I'm a big,
and it'll always be the stuff you never expect that'll jump in value. That's why it's valuable, because nobody took advantage when it was out initially.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's a tricky market, and
scarcity drives that market, especially on the higher prices of the values of the market of that. That's why the Golden Age books, early Silver Age books, are worth so much, because there's not a lot of that stuff left around.
Yeah, I agree.
And what is there is all being slabbed. So,
I'm guilty of it. So I got no problem. I'm guilty of it. Very guilty. There's certain books in my collection, and they're not for sale.
Yeah,
not for sale.
Absolutely.
My DC Presents number 26 is a very high grade. I have a 9.6 of it. It's not for sale.
Cool.
And it's one of my favorite books of all time. But anyway, I digress right there.
We all have our favorites. I do a show Friday morning called Comics by Night, where we go through all of this beautiful old material, this phenomenal sequential art. Got Glenn and Russ from over in England, and whoever else that I can get to wake up early enough, 5 a.m.s when we do it live. But right now we're going through Watchmen. And before that, it was everything. It was Simonson's Manhunter. We've done an episode on Alex Toth, an episode on Alex Nino, and did an episode, I think, on there from Darwin Cook. All these great artists, and there's so much phenomenal material out there that you're never ever going to cover it all.
Oh,
but it's so much fun to show off and to look at and to analyze and say, look at how this panel works. Look at how this guy's composition runs here and here. And I would love to see these scripts. And we're working off of, got the annotated Watchmen right now that's in black and white. I picked it up from Ollie's for like next to nothing. And it's got notes on the whole stuff. Plus, I got a hold of the making of Watchmen, that Dave Gibbons did. Watching the Watchmen. That's got pre-production notes and script, copies of the script and all that in it. It's just amazing. This art form, I can talk about it for hours. How great sequential art is, comic book art is, from all sorts of sources.
Oh man, I go back to like Pat Mills. And like down in back,
we're gonna cover those 2000 AD guys one of these days. I swear we will. Right now, Glenn, one of the guys from England that we do the Comics by Night with, he's a huge Frank Bellamy fan. So Frank Bellamy was an English illustrator, did Garth, the Garth comic strip, which is a time traveler adventure strip for years. And it's just a master illustrator, and did a lot of work for Gary Anderson's Thunderbirds and the Gary Anderson properties that are just unbelievably beautiful. And we'll be covering those here pretty quick, probably as soon as we're done with Watchmen. But yeah, it's just that there's so much great stuff out there from all over the world that you'll never cover it.
The problem is that I can go back, and this is like why I'm having issues now with comics. And I hate to say it, like I have a hard time finding books that I want to read, and it takes so much to convince me. Yeah. I've been so disenchanted by the main two, and even with Kickstarter and people just waiting. I've been burned on a bunch of projects, and every time I get burned, I want to pull back. And I don't think I can be blamed. And I think it's a real issue in the industry.
It is. It is. But it's like I said, it's the Wild West right now. Everybody's kind of feeling their way around what works, what doesn't work. You know, you don't have a whole lot of well, you have a lot of examples, but you don't have a lot of successful examples out there for people to look at. There's a lot of stuff that a lot of little examples of things that have gone wrong, especially with crowdfunding. But you have some folks out there that are turning themselves into their work into a regular industry, like Brian Paluto. Everybody leans to Brian's example, or Eric made a lot of money, or Ethan made a lot of money, or
I'll throw a name out there that I think is doing a good job in figuring out Pat Shan.
Yeah.
With that space between. I think he's doing an okay job. I don't think he's fully there yet.
Right.
But I think in another year, he'll be a good example to copy.
Well, everybody's feeling their way around because crowdfunding really is a new platform. It's a new venue, and there's stuff that you can do and stuff they're figuring out you can't do or you shouldn't do. That makes it a problem. I hate it when somebody does a campaign and they haven't fulfilled the campaign, but they're doing conventions selling their book. That drives me up the wall. It's like, dude, there's people that have already paid you for that book, and here you're selling it at a show. It's just, it's crazy.
There are things that drive me crazy. There's certain things drive me crazy. That's one of them. I hate when people sell their book at a con for the same price they sell it on the Kickstarter. That annoys me. I'll be very honest about it, because here I am supporting indie, and you're going to sell it at a con for the same price. So why the hell would I buy it on the Kickstarter?
Plus postage. You get a few extras, maybe. You might get a sticker. Hey.
Yeah. Sticker completely sold. Completely sold on the sticker, guys. Oh,
I got them all. I got them all above me there. All sorts of stickers. Yeah.
I'm not anti-sticker. I just want to
down here in my dungeon basement, and that's all the stickers I get. I just stick above me. So
I am not anti-sticker, but a sticker does not move the needle for me.
No.
Any which way.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
What also drives me crazy are floppies, 32 pages or under, that they're selling for $10 a hit plus shipping. That sometimes drives me nuts as well. So.
But I look the other way on that. I'll be very honest. Yeah. I get it if it's $10 and it's a cover A. What drives me crazy is a cover A that's $25 and it's a floppy, because I'm a big Zenoscope guy and I like their variants. They'll sell me a Paul Green 250 copies of Paul Green's book, one of them, for $25. So I could take it, which is fine because it's Paul Green. It's super limited.
Okay.
I get it. I'm buying it because it's scarce and I know that I can flip it for 50.
All right.
So I understand why I'm paying what I'm paying for it.
Sure.
What bothers me is when it's a no-name artist, I don't know, it's your cover A, and your book is on the fence. $25 is not how you get me in as a customer.
Especially for a 32 page or less book. Yeah.
It's the idea that if I'm going to take a risk on your book, you have to be in the $10, $12 range, and I'll take the risk. If you're at $20, $25, it's unattractive to me.
Yeah. I hear you.
But I digress because I do want to back out of that, and I do want to talk a little bit about further going into Arrow, because obviously you're the editor-in-chief.
Wherever you want to go. Yep.
And so what is this like for you? Because you don't own anybody's work that you publish and put out, but it's still your company. And so what is that like, finding the right balance? sure you bring in
it's kind of a cooperative company, but we like I like having the say as to what, you know, making sure that there's a level of quality maintained there. Because if you get a lower standard book coming in as an Arrow title, it might drag everybody down. But you get those great, and all of the books that we've been picking up have just been phenomenal. It's been like, you want to be an Arrow comic? Okay, come on. You know, you can do that. Absolutely. That kind of thing. We really, there's not a whole lot of people that I have turned down, but there's not a whole lot of people that have asked to become Arrow. And when they do, it's like, well, let's take a look at your book. Well, of course, you know, you're welcome in, or, hey, we're not, you know, you really need to work on a little bit of this and that before we can look at you. But we're really looking for a professional product here. And as a group, we're hoping eventually we'll attract somebody, you know, if we're out there long enough, if you build it, they will come, that kind of philosophy. We've got a field of dreams out there with a bunch of IP products that we absolutely love, that we all love each other's books. We want to promote them to the nth degree from all over the world, actually, because we've got Marv E in there with Sin Killer doing an amazing noir, kind of a supernatural revenge book. That's just, I can't talk highly enough about it, because I've watched Marv E grow from trying to do sequential art to not just doing sequential art, but doing it incredibly well. Every product he does is a huge step upwards for him. And it's just amazing. I can't, in a year, in 2 years, in 3 years, he is going to be kicking out the most unbelievable, or he already is kicking out incredibly great works. But in a few years, he is going to be unstoppable, completely unstoppable, especially if he keeps growing the way that he has been. And being in this business as long as I've been, and exposed to it and loving the art form, the art form kept me sane when I was a kid. You know, so I owe everything to comics, pretty much. That it gives, I think it gives us a really good eye to know what looks good and what doesn't look good. So, and I'm proud of every Arrow comic that comes out. It's just, and I wish everybody could read it. That's our big problem right now. It's just trying to find that readership and being accessible.
Yeah, and even to go into that too, because this is one of the things I think quality control is a big deal.
It is.
So I work in, accessibility quality control as my job, as my day job. And it's a massively important thing when you're dealing with a bunch of stuff. And so what is that like? Because the last thing I want to do on this show is have people on this show who really shouldn't be on this show, right? Who don't have a product that fits in or are ready for it, especially with comics in particular. And there's been people on the show who should not have been on this show, and they weren't ready for it. And
art is so subjective to start with, but everybody's, if you're in this business correctly, I should say, you're in it to learn. So you're going to get better. You're going to figure things out as you go along. A lot of it's learning by doing too. So you're going to get some folks that are on the ground floor that are just starting out, but their evolution is fascinating to watch. If you go back and look at the first version of Arrow comics, it started with Guy Davis, Vince Locke, Mark Bloodworth, Sue Van Camp, and myself, and Mark Winfrey, as well as Ralph and Stu. Ralph and Stu were doing a lot of the writing. Guy is currently doing the art production work for Guillermo del Toro. Vince Locke went on to do Sandman. He does every Cannibal Corpse cover that's out there and has done some incredibly fine art painting. Mark is currently doing unbelievable illustrative work in advertising, and he's still doing sequentials every once in a while. Sue Van Camp is back painting again. She painted a huge amount of magic cards in her day and had her own game with her husband, and now she's finally back out painting and doing some great productive work. And I'm doing Arrow comics with a group of friends. So all of that, everybody there has just gone on, and even our other incarnations of Arrow have seen folks go on to do some great stuff. So Jason Moore is a huge inker. He was involved with The Dead, the second version of Arrow comics, way back when. Him and I are still talking about doing more products together. And there's all sorts of stuff that we're talking about, coming down the pike. with Arrow. A lot of 3G stuff and a lot of regular Arrow comics as well. So, all I can say is just watch us and watch how we grow.
And then you mentioned something else that I also want to touch upon, because I've been saying this for a while, that the things that are going to determine, I think, the future are, when you can get something on demand, also big libraries and customization, and also media is massively fragmented right now. And it's only been more fragmented.
Yep.
And, obviously people have to choose between Netflix. If you're into anime, it's Crunchyroll. If you're into, Peacock, Disney, Hulu, Paramount Plus. I can't think of any. Cable is a big one. I mean, there's only so much money that goes around.
Right.
So what is that like for you, figuring out even what your audience looks like, how to find an audience, and even handle that? Because it's so tricky right now, I feel, in this.
It is. Yep.
And I mean, I could tell you, and I don't know how your show does, but it used to be at the beginning of COVID, I had much higher numbers, and now everybody has a podcast. And, I still have an audience, but, it's a lot smaller, and I don't think I'm the only one.
Yeah, well, sometimes folks have moved on or moved off of different platforms and that, but most of the time, the shows that I have are relatively new and they're all fun. We just talk about fun stuff. We try to stay up and positive, and I don't even do a whole lot of shill streams anymore, where we're talking about other people's crowdfunders. I'll have an occasional guest on that wants to promote a campaign that they're doing, but most of the time we're just talking about why we love this art form that we're in. Our numbers have stayed pretty steady and have been growing. I won't say exponentially, but they've been growing. There's a bit of slow growth as more people discover what we're out here and what we're doing. So it's just a matter of sticking it out and being there and trying to find your niche and farming it for all that it's worth. It's typical marketing, just like marketing in the comic market. There's so many ways you can go, so many ways you should go, and so many other ways you should be trying. And all of us are out there. I keep saying that we are the trailblazers right now. We're the alternative in the independent market. Those so-called mainstream books, and they're really not mainstream anymore. They're in the same niche market that we're in, especially the big printers, or the so-called big publishers. They're all owned by a corporation that really doesn't care about them. And basically their rule is just don't lose us a lot of money. Don't make us pay attention to you, or, they'll be like IDW and cut a third of your staff all at once. You see DC's gone through 3 or 4 big cutbacks at once, and all of this stuff happening. And it's a crazy market right now, but it's one that the art form is going to come out healthier on, because the art form always finds a way to survive. It's like life and life on other planets. As long as people are out there who want to tell stories with pictures and words, comics are going to survive. And no matter what platform they're on, you could see I could see a motion comic up on Netflix, or offered as part of that platform. Eventually DC got really close to doing that when they had their own platform. They were opening up all of their stuff digitally for people to read, their library. That I can't see why that can't work, on other platforms to a larger scale. All folks have to do is know that the stuff is there and that it's accessible. Look at what's happened to manga over the years. Holy crap. And I think the big reason for that is because, one, it's quality product. Most of it's incredibly entertaining, but most of all, it's accessible. You can get up there, you can pay $3 or $2 or whatever a month and have all of this material that you can sit there and just read. You can lose yourself for days up there for a couple bucks. We need to be that accessible again somehow. Sure, there needs to be art books out there. There needs to be slabbed books out there, but digital needs to be out there. We need to find a way to get out. I want to find a really cheap medium. I love Archie Digests at the grocery stores. There needs to be a lot more of that. There needs to be underground comics. Where's Last Gasp and Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers and every freaking dispensary that's out there? Ought to have a little spiral rack or a little rack, pop-up point of purchase display with Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers in it, because it's funny, it's quality, and it's good, and people can relate to it, especially the ones that smoke the weed. Yeah. There are so many different. They used to sell comics wrapped in bubble gum. Bazooka Joe was a big icon for many years. We need to get back to that era and just be pushing this art form in every direction. I keep saying on my show, you see these racks back here, you see the bag and the board and the slabs and all that. You don't have to fit into that. You can think outside the box and make whatever format that you want to use. Back when comics, the reason we're down at this format, at the format that we're at now, is because the printing presses could print it easy and cut it easy. That's why we're there. That's why comics came out on the stands in the first place, is they wanted to keep their presses wet when they were printing the regular newspaper. So they found the thing that sold, which was the funny papers, stuck them all together into a book and stuck them out on the stands for a dime just to see if they'd sell. And that's what started this entire business, this entire industry. The direct market literally was started by a bunch of guys who didn't want to have to hunt through all of their spiral racks in order to find books. That way they can have them shipped to them directly. They started their own little shops, became retailers, so that every Thursday or Wednesday or whenever the comics came in, they could sit there and read them all. That's what, back when I first started retailing, that's what we did every Thursday or Wednesday night. Whenever the comics came in, we'd sit around with a copy of each thing, pass them back and forth amongst ourselves, so we knew what the product was that we were selling. It's all part of the love of the entertainment value that these books have.
I'm a collector. I'm a collector, and I buy and sell books because I'll buy 5 of the same book and I'll keep one for myself because I love this industry.
Sure.
And then I'll sell the rest, and I make a profit, but it funds my hobby.
Right.
And I figured out how to do that. I'm a huge baseball card collector, and it's the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I get it. I get it completely. But I agree. I had Chuck Dixon on my other show, and what he said is we lost a generation when Archie left the supermarket because little Joey would go with mommy to the supermarket, and mommy said that, hey, Joey, if you're good, I'll buy you a comic at the checkout line for $1.
Yep.
And when that lost the whole generation. Because
technically they're still at the grocery store. If you look hard enough, they're just $8, $9, $10 now for a digest book that are still sold on impulse. Only it's all, if you've looked inside of an Archie digest lately, Steve Butler's been doing original material, little short stories that they're running original material in those digests using Archie and one of their pantheon of superheroes. Like you'll see the Web with Betty and Veronica or whatever. It's a great way for them to get their IPs out there in front of new eyes who haven't seen them before. But I tell everybody, the person that's done the most for this industry in the last 5-10 years has been Dave Pilkey, who's out there doing Dog Man, and he's doing the Cool Cat Comic Club, because both of those books are bringing in a whole new generation of readers that are going to hopefully graduate up into reading either comics or YA graphic novels, Raina Telgemeier and then step up from there. And let's hope that there's a large enough variety out there of American or basic comics in general that they'll keep reading. Lately it's all been transferring over to manga, and that's why that industry has been growing so much.
I mean, there's a reason why Sony bought Crunchyroll for $1.2 billion.
Yep.
It's the reason why. I mean, and I was a manga kid more than a graphic novel kid.
Mm-hmm.
I got into graphic novels because they were right across from comics.
Okay.
So manga was right across from graphic novels. So I was not a comic reader and a floppy reader first. I was a graphic novel reader.
Gotcha.
And so, but I just liked manga. I thought it was cooler. It looked neater. It looked more exciting. And
pick it up in a thick volume and get a big chunk of story for almost the same price as buying 3 or 4 comics. Yeah.
So, and then my parents were just giving it to me, and there were some fun stories, and
sure,
I've never left. And now I'm into manga, I'm into comics, and it's great. But I have slowly seen at my local Barnes and Noble that the manga section started out being half and half, and it has consumed and eaten up the graphic novel very slowly. We're talking 20 years of me seeing it. And okay, it's a half a shelf. Then it's another half of a shelf. And then it's another half. And all of a sudden, the graphic novel section has 3 shelves, and the manga section is a beast. It's a beast, and they put it against the wall right next to the Starbucks cafe so that it's purposely done. Oh, it's so brilliant. It's like the greatest thing Barnes & Noble has ever done.
Well, our Barnes and Nobles split that away from the coffee shop. The magazines are closer to the cafe area than the manga. The manga's way in the back so that they can keep track of it. And then all of the tchotchkes for manga, all of the statues and that are under glass cases, so that you actually have to ask for assistance before before you end up picking one up. But it went from a shelf to a rack to a row to 4 rows. Now it's about 6 rows at my local Barnes and Noble. Just crazy the amount of manga material that they have there, and regular graphic novels, maybe 3-4 racks. 1 rack for Marvel, 1 rack for DC, 1 rack for Independence.
I mean, I can tell you that in New York City, there's a bookstore. It's a Japanese bookstore, and they're all over. The whole upstairs is manga. The whole upstairs is manga. And it's bigger, and it's both Japanese and American. But American manga in that store is just as big as the Japanese section.
I think about 25 years ago, I got a book on manga, a basic textbook on the properties at the time to look out for. And they pointed out over in Japan, they print more manga right at that point than they did toilet paper. And it wasn't unusual to see a grown adult, 50, 60 years old, sitting on their subway reading a 300-page Shonen Jump. That's where we want comics here.
It's about pricing. It's about pricing.
It's about accessibility and pricing. You got to keep it inexpensive, but Japan has had decades to figure out how to do it and do it right. And the other countries in general, I should say, it's not just Japan, because you have manga and all of that.
What I understand then is, if Japan has figured out the model, why don't we just steal it like we steal everything else in America?
Well, for one, we're pretty bullheaded. And for two, we've watched 30 years of a direct market that has stagnated under the same demographics, because Diamond told everybody, they did their own little independent study, and they figured out where your demographics are, and everybody should hit that demographic. And that's 25 to 55, mostly male, mostly white. And that's why the market stagnated here in America for as long as it did, because over in Japan, they were doing mangas about everything. They got mangas about fishing. They got mangas about golfing. They got mangas about and every age group. They've got hardcore adult material, and they've got softcore material. They've got straight material. They've got romance novels for girls. They've got little kids stuff going on constantly, and they're always moving sequential art manga over there, like, it's there. It's a primary source of entertainment there, because that's where the imagination is. That's where the quality is. That's where the fun is. And if we were to bring that same mentality here to the States, we'd see sequential art, your comics, be just as big. But a lot of these large corporations, they don't care as long as they got something. They need that emblem so that they can sell the can or the underoos or the action figure or whatever they can sell, except for the comic. And they're letting that quality on that product slide way more. And it just, it's like a basic level of disrespect that was brought on in the 50s when the code kicked in, where they told everybody out there that comics were meant for kids and it has to stay at a kiddie level. A lot of people still have that mentality. A lot of other folks who've bothered to go into a comic shop or bothered to start reading some of this great literature that's out there now know better. But that percentage, thanks to the Marvel Universe movies, are slowly getting larger, thank goodness. But in my day, you couldn't, I was picked on at school for drawing comics. I've got newspaper articles still that start with Biff, Pow, Bam on it, because their idea of superheroes begins and ends with Adam West's Batman. And it's taken a long time to see that evolve into what it is now. And it's not there yet, as far as I'm concerned. And the sad thing to me is you're seeing a lot of people in the industry disrespect the art form, that think that they can get in for no talent, or that they can do whatever slop that they can do. And now it's AI. So you grab your chat GPD or whatever it's called, and you type in your qualifications for a script, and it'll kick out a comic book script for you. And I'm sure that's been happening the last 4 or 5 years up there at the larger companies, that you've got these people who have practically no talent, if any, up there that are typing in, know how to type in and make a basic program, make the basic format for a comic script, and are turning in and getting paid for stuff that they've had computers.
I don't even think it's that. I don't think it's Chat GPT. I think a lot of these people are using like screenwriter tools.
Oh yeah.
And I think they're just
that's what I mean.
Away, and then I don't even think it's AI. In which I would take it even simpler than AI.
Well, it's taken out a lot of the imagination, that's for sure.
I think that and look, I think people in indie do it. I think 25% of indie does that. Where
I hope not. I'd like to think that a lot of the indie stuff is a lot more personal.
See, the reason why I say this is because I've read a bunch of people's stuff that reads like a screenplay. It doesn't read like a comic.
Yeah.
I mean, I just got, Mike Barron's book, Private American. I didn't open it yet, but from what I know, I liked, Thin Blue Line. I enjoyed the story, and I thought there was a story there. Whether, and I'm hoping there's a story with Private American, but I'm excited to read it.
Right.
Another book is Pat Chan's Destiny New York.
Okay.
There's a story there.
Yeah.
But I've read people's books, and I'm not going to mention who, where it felt like they were trying to pitch it to Hollywood and Netflix.
Oh, yeah. Well, unfortunately, again, that goes back to the lack of respect for the art form. They're only looking at comics as a necessity or a small stepping stone. It's like having a starter wife or a starter house. It's just something I do now in order to get to the real prize up the road. Well, comics are, to a lot of people, they are that real prize, and they need that. They need to get the respect they deserve. There has to be a certain level of understanding about the business and respect given. If you're just there writing a screenplay, thankfully they're not there for long, but because they either step up or step out.
I don't know. I know plenty of people who have written a bunch of comics, and they say, all I want to do is write a screenplay, and they're still around. And I'm like, but your book's not that good because it reads dry.
Yeah.
It's not, the concept is good. It's just that you got to tell the story better. It's not a page turn issue. It's like, maybe your book should have been 4 issues and not 6.
Well, it's also an understanding you're dealing with a whole different animal. You're not dealing with a screenplay structure when you do this. If you go back, and I use this example a lot, you go back and you read Joe Straczynski's comic work. When he first broke into comics, he thought he was writing screenplays too, because he knew television, he knew movie screenplays, and it was terrible. His stuff was dry. It was long-winded. It didn't go anywhere, but it didn't take him long to figure out what the differences were between a comic book and a movie, or a comic book and a TV. There's a whole different structure. Even when you water it down, decompress it, and turn it into a 6-issue arc, there's still a whole different structure to it than if you're writing for television or writing for movies. And I've seen some stuff from Straczynski that has just been phenomenal in comics. And I've got every respect for him as a writer, especially seeing how he figures things out and knows how to adapt, and his stuff just gets better all the time.
Did he do Superman Earth 1?
I don't remember. The big run I tell everybody to look for, he did a run of Brave and the Bolds that they collected that were all single issue stories, and they were different. And the structure is different. The storytelling's different on every story, but every story is a gem. And that's just amazing reads. The artwork's nice, but those stories there's a story where Flash is running through time, and he ends up breaking his leg and ends up back in World War II, and he meets Sergeant Rock, and he has to wait for his leg to heal. Actually, more than he'll heal back 100% in order for him to run through time again, because you have to run really fast when you're running through time. There's a story where Zatanna, Supergirl, and Batgirl, I believe it is, Barbara Gordon, all go out for a night out. Just a completely different structure, but a phenomenal story. And it's all under that Brave and the Bold run that he did. There's a book out that collects like 6 of them all in one book, and every one of them's a gem. Just beautiful reads. just great. There's still a lot of great. There's still some great comics coming out there. It's just that it's getting fewer and farther between from the bigger companies because there are people up there who don't understand, don't want to understand, and don't want to respect the business.
I mean, I'll be very honest. The last thing I read was from IDW that I thoroughly enjoyed, and it was Sonic the Hedgehog, because I still think they got it. I think Ian Flynn still has it.
Cool.
I think the guy still has it. He's been writing Sonic the Hedgehog for 17 years, and I don't think they lost a beat. I think Larry Hama with G.I. Joe, I think he still has it.
Cool.
Where it's not the greatest book that comes out every single month, but it's a good book, and it's an enjoyable book, and it's a comic book.
Right.
Yep. You know, it's not a lecturing to me. It's not a movie. It's not a TV show. It's not supposed to be a fine art painting. It's G.I. Joe by Larry Hama.
Yep.
I'm sorry to say it, but I expect it to be that way.
Yeah. This morning on Nerd Bacon, Luke's got Chat GBT, and we asked it for a Spider-Man story, and the Spider-Man story it gave Luke was better than anything that's been written in Spider-Man in years. We're sitting there going, holy crap, this is actually a decent, you could do this with that. And this, it gave you a bare bones bank robbery story to it. We're like, why, you know, maybe some of these guys should be using Chat, you know, if they're not already. But there's so much self-insert and so much soapboxing going on that and a good editor ought to be able to tell them, whoa, yeah, that's a little overly done. There are great ways to get your point across, and we're in an art form, so everybody does have their own personal viewpoint, whether they want to admit it or not, that they're putting into their work, because that's what art is. Art is putting your viewpoint, your perspective, and making a point with it enough to make other people think. That's art. That comics are an art form, and the indies especially have a lot of that going on in it, but there's just such a I don't know where I was going with this, but basically there's just such a need for folks out there to try to work their craft. You know, some of the most preachiest television was Star Trek and Twilight Zone. It's just that Roddenberry and Rod Serling knew how to do it so entertainingly that their material is now evergreen. And you can sit there and watch it now, and it's just as relevant and just as important and makes just as big of a. That's the kind of comics and the quality of writing and craftsmanship that we need in this art form. And when you find it, you need to tell everybody about it, because the only way you can get marketing anymore pretty much is by word of mouth. So you need to go out there and tell folks, hey, I read a great set of stories.
True.
You know, these are pretty hot. Yeah. Right, and you can't just dismiss something. You can't. It's so, politics are so cruddy anymore, and everything's so polarized. You can't dismiss everybody because they have a bad day or a bad issue or a bad property or whatever, because everybody has their good and their bad streaks when they want to apply their trade or their skills to this art form.
Oh, without a doubt. I guarantee you that if I do 130, 140 interviews a year, I'm going to statistically have 20 bad interviews.
Absolutely.
To be generous to me.
Yeah.
And if you just so happen to catch those 20 bad interviews, you might think my show is horrible.
Exactly.
But if you look at it as a whole, you know, you have to realize that, hey, look, not everything is going to hit. Not every question hits. Right. In my career as an interviewer over the last 10 years, I've had one perfect interview from start to finish.
Cool.
Only one. Where
at least you had that, and you know you had it. That's the cool thing.
And it was just the fact that me and my guests were so attuned.
Sure.
And it was brilliant, and the whole interview flowed on such a high note that anybody who watches it will feel good afterwards. Even if you're not a wrestling fan, you'll be like, how did this was so positive. And it was so perfect. And for whatever reason, I was relaxed. My guest was relaxed. I was super happy. And my guest was, I guess, in a good mood, and it worked. And it's a very rare thing. I've had great interviews, never a perfect one. That was the only one I've had. But I've also had disasters. So it happens. And so I don't dismiss a writer or an artist if they have a shitty book. I don't. It's when you have 3 or 4 in a row that I'm like, okay, this isn't working.
Yeah. Everybody also does waves. You know, there's some artists that get on a project that they love and they do tremendous work. They get on their next project, they're doing it for a paycheck. They don't really care, or they don't have any respect for the material, and they turn in a crappy job. You know, it happens.
Yeah. I mean, the writer that I'm talking about, where he had a book that was bad, and then his next book was great. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm not gonna touch this book over here, but I'm gonna buy book B. Book B was great, and I hate to say it, but book A was just not my cup of tea. Maybe it's me, I don't know, but I just thought that book B was written better. And
that's part of that art being subjective too. Some of it's going to appeal to you really well, and some of it's not. So
maybe it was the concept. I don't know, but
could be.
I do want to talk about some of your stuff.
Sure,
it's important. And I know this started off in a negative way, but I think it's a positive overall. And it's this bad boy right here.
There we are. Yeah, HeroBot Zero.
And he's a very, very outstanding robot.
Yep. Thanks for finding those. Yeah, he's a 3-foot-tall giant robot who defends his city from large monsters or other menaces, as long as he can do it on the clock and get time and a half for hazard pay. Yeah.
See, but this is why I like this book. It's fun. That's the point.
It's meant to be fun. Yeah. I want to see, and believe me, I don't write this as a screenplay, but put this in a cartoon. Absolutely. I want to see it. I'll even voice HeroBot Zero and save him a lot of money. What are you talking about? Yeah. Anyway,
I just want to see like a 6-episode, like miniature anime, or even 12 episodes. Just, I mean, I'll be happy with 12 episodes on like Cartoon Network. And I have a niece, and she's probably not old enough yet to watch it, but this is the type of thing that I would want her to watch. And when I have kids, this is the type of stuff that I want them to watch. So it's like, what is that like though? Because to me, that's the fun stuff of comics.
And there's so much more to show you on this too, that you haven't seen the Null and Void. You haven't met Tippy's dad yet, Mr. Totak. There's all sorts of stuff to show you that we kind of dropped you. I kind of dropped you in the middle of the situation with his origin in the first issue, and we just work off from there. There's a lot going on. Have you seen Calico?
I think I have that up there too. I have this one.
Calico
right
Shard, that one right there. Yep. That's a high fantasy book that I wrote that C. Michael Lanning did the artwork for, because I know my limitations. And Michael Lanning's got this beautiful fantasy, unique, not I guess you might call it cartoony, but he's got a great style to his stuff. It's the adventures of a talking cat, female cat, who's figuring out her world, and her world is literally blown apart. And she's traveling around with an elf guy who collects things and carries his collection with him in a bag next to him, which is set up kind of like a TARDIS. He's got his whole collection sitting there in this almost like black hole of a bag. When he's got it, the story starts, he doesn't have it. But he's very magical, and he shoots little spells. There's a female centaur, Amazonian warrior character who's all gung-ho. And there's an old wizened Gandalfian type wizard character there. My favorite guy is Rut. He's the fairy right there. He's a macho barbarian fairy with a sword, and he's got all of these old. He's stuck in his ways. Let's put it that way. And he's very macho. So him and the centaur character have some interesting discussions about masculinity and basic chauvinism in the book. So it's all the while they're dealing with a really magical situation. And at the end of the first issue, I don't want to spoil it, but anyway, it's part of a long running story that you would have to read. That I love it. I'm very geeked about it. The artwork worked. I did the C. Michael did the pencils and inks on this. I did the colors and did all the writing and the lettering and everything besides that. And I just love the product. My wife says it's the best thing I've ever written. So, and she's known me longer than, most everybody that's been alive. So yeah, there's that one. There's also Paragon up there as well, which is a superhero book. Yeah, you got it right there, with artwork by J.R. Harris. And that's my, what happens if there's suddenly a super powered being that pops up on your world story. And it's got a great twist at the end of it that so far I ask everybody not to tell what the ending is, but everybody's surprised by the ending. So, and it's a fun book. It's a character who can leap tall buildings in a single bound, and it's faster than a speeding bullet, and only a bursting shell can penetrate their skin. So that gives you an idea of where the mindset on that character is. Only they pop up on a world that hasn't seen superheroes before. So it's a lot of fun.
So let's even dive into this a little bit. And what is this like to have obviously these three titles in play? Because I think these are newer from you, and they're all different. And that's the thing too, is that somebody who might like Herobot Zero might not want a superhero book. Somebody who's into fantasy might not like a robot book or a superhero book. Or somebody might say, look, I just like superheroes, but I'm sick of Superman. I don't know if I can say that. But
Daphne Lage, who does Tall Tales and Ego Raven, which are two real high fantasy books. Very greatly done.
There's only one fantasy book we talk about on this show, and it's Oswald. So please.
Oh, there we go. Oswald Chronicles. Yeah. She sat down and read Paragon. She hates superhero stories. She told me she loved it. She thought it was amazing. So yeah, I'm really up on that. And that fits into a world, and that fits into the same universe as the Fool does. And I'm running the Fool campaign right now over at fundmycomics.com. And that's the story of a guy who fights urban street crime, who dresses up in almost like a tattered rag outfit made out of the trophies of the people that he ties anybody he ties up for the cops that he places under citizen arrest. He takes a section of their clothing as a trophy and then incorporates it into his action duds. And he fights crime with practical joke weapons. Like he's lethal with a yo-yo. He's got a rubber chicken that he uses like a bat that he swats people with, and has a paddle ball that he uses to confuse folks with, and just does all sorts of crazy stuff. And the main point of the story is there's been a couple of cops that have been assigned to his case just to get him off the street, because they're afraid he's going to hurt someone if he doesn't hurt himself. But he's really a superhero. He's got acrobatic skills, and he's got just a super amount of luck. And it's just, and that, just like Herobot Zero and Paragon and Calico, it's meant to be fun. These are comics that are just meant to be entertaining, give you a great story, and hopefully entertain you and send you on your way, and leaving wanting more. It's the idea.
Yeah, to even talk about that, this is also a big pet peeve of mine, where comics, I feel everybody is trying to tell the next great story.
Mm-hmm.
They're not trying to understand, hey, people want to escape their life because life is hard.
Right.
And I think there's a real issue, because everybody deals with things in life,
Absolutely.
People, sometimes if you have kids, your kid's sick, your boss is torturing you, maybe you lost somebody, maybe you went through a nasty divorce, maybe you're dealing with some serious health issues, or maybe you just had a really bad day at work. I hate to say this, but I don't want to read somebody's, ode to whatever because they want to win a Ringo Award.
Yep.
I sometimes want to pay $5, $10, $15, and I want you to take me out of my world and into somebody else's world that's fun, enjoyable. And I think that might be part of the problem with comics right now, as well as that people have forgotten that you got to entertain your reader.
Mm-hmm. That's what comics are all about, though. It's that if you've got the ability to tell stories with words and pictures, you ought to be able to entertain folks and take them to places that they haven't been before, and not just take them up the street for pizza. That's what you need. That's why I got into comics. I mean, comics were always my life preserver. They literally kept me sane when I first growing up. My parents wouldn't let me have superhero comics at all, because they thought it was too violent. And this is back during the Adam West days, so they let me have superheroes after they caught me with a Twilight Zone digest that I bought that had a guy making a deal with the devil. So they said, if you take this Twilight Zone digest, which I have a copy of again, Here, if you take that digest and throw it in the fire, we'll let you buy those superhero comics, because we'd rather have you reading violence than reading all this satanic literature. So, of course, some of the first books that I ended up buying were Ghost Rider and Son of Satan. I found the spirit real early on in Warren reprints with Will Eisner's work, and realized that these are all 7-page stories that take you places. I love this guy. So, yeah, big fan of the spirit for that reason. And just, I was lucky enough, as a kid, to have to deal with the quest and have to go out and know where every spiral rack was in your neighborhood or within a 10, 20-mile radius, so that when Captain Marvel by Jim Starlin or a Killraven by P. Craig Russell and Don McGregor came out, you knew that was the week. So you traveled all over until you found one, and it was usually in the back of the rack somewhere in one of those places. So you went, it was a real quest at the time. Instead of now, you just order them 3 months in advance and wait for your retailer to get them in and find them in your pull bag or your pull list. So it's been a big change.
Yeah, I feel like there's no quest for me.
Yeah.
Now. I feel deprived.
Well, now my quests are for the larger collections and the books. I have a big library of different art books and stuff. That's why I like doing the comics by nights. There's so much stuff, and there's so much stuff to show off. So much great material. Like, I've got an entire book rack filled with essentials. I've got another book rack filled with DC Showcase Presents, which have 25 issues, all in newsprint and black and white, just jammed in a nice thick 500-page book volume. Those were great books, and they were inexpensive. A lot of phenomenal stuff printed during that period, and you don't see them reprint them anymore, because it's like everybody up there at those companies have no respect for all of the old material, or they think it's going to trigger somebody with something taken out of context. It's just a mess.
It is what it is, but I've seen some good stuff being reprinted. Maybe 2-3 years ago, like
rarely, yeah.
Of Praise was reprinted. That was good, and there's some other stuff. But yeah, no, I think everybody just needs to become an adult again. But
there was a time when I couldn't get away with from the first 10 issues of Spider-Man, the first 15 or 20 Strange Tales segments of Doctor Strange, because they were reprinted everywhere. Prestige format books, paperback books, the newsprint books, wherever. You don't see those days anymore. And all of that material seems to be sequestered. When's the last time you saw a Dick Sprang Batman reprint?
Yeah.
For example, a lot of that stuff's got a lot of charm to it. It's not your I'm Batman dead serious characters. Some of that stuff's pretty goofy, but some of that stuff's also very entertaining. The majority of that stuff is very entertaining.
It's a problem. It's whatever.
Missed opportunity. I was talked to Dan Didio at a Great Lakes Con back in February, and I said, dude, if I'd have known I had a chance, I'd have asked to be your reprint editor. And he goes, oh man, we really needed you too, because they kept reprinting the same stuff over and over again. I says, yeah, I'd have gone through your backlog and dug out all of the really great obscure stuff done by all these great artists and put them all in books and stuck them out there. That's what I would have done. Would have been fun.
Yeah, no, I'm not planning in which that the only way I will ever get to run DC Comics is if I buy enough stock in that company.
And which company? They're going to be handed off like a hot potato here in a couple of years.
I was fortunate enough that I did pick up a bunch of AT&T, and I did get that stock spin-off Warner Bros. Discovery.
Okay.
But yeah, I was fortunate enough to get a bunch of free stock out of it, but who knows what's going to happen? I mean,
yeah,
they've been told that they're going to be handed off everywhere, and it's been discussed for years. So I don't even know if that's on the docket anymore, or if they don't really care because they like the intellectual property more. They like the movie of Batman more than they like the comic of Batman.
And it's the sad, serious Batman too. But, you got Me TV running out there, running those Adam West, Burt Ward Batmans in rerun all the time. People still watching those. So there's still a little Biff, Pow, Bam in everybody,
Hey, it is. You got to drink your milk. That's all I'm going to say.
Got to have your candy and your steak. That's what it is.
And then I do want to end on this because I do want to talk about Spank the Monkey, because why wouldn't I want to talk about this? I think it's funny.
Thank
I
you
don't know anything about
very
this
much.
book. I think this is just ridiculous.
Well, see, can I tell you the story on that? How much time we got? You want to stick to an hour, or?
Oh no, as much time as you want.
I can babble on for a long time. Spank the Monkey was a joke. It started out at a Philadelphia con that Pam Hazelton and Joe Monks were at, the guys who do Cry for Dawn, Chanting Monk Studios. We were at a Philadelphia con where we were stuck up in a room. This was decades ago, probably 25 years or so ago. And there was nobody coming up. We were on the second story of a convention. Everybody had to walk up a set of stairs and find our room in order to come in and talk to us. So the fans there were pretty sparse. So we were talking back and forth with each other. And Pam was starting a fanzine at the time called Lacune, where she was having interviews and different pop culture, more alternative pop culture stories in it. And we got to talking, and I says, my favorite old underground character used to be from Grass Green. It was a character, an angry bird called Flip the Bird. Says, but if we were to do it now, it'd have to be a monkey. So it would be Spank the Monkey. And she started laughing. Says, what would he look like? I drew him up right there at the show. And says, oh, he has to have a companion or somebody that's like a humor relief to bounce off of, because he's so serious and angry and almost bitter, not quite bitter. So I drew up his brain dead cousin, Shock. So it's Shock and Spank the Monkey. So she thought it was really funny and says, you want to do up commentary strips using the monkey? I'll run it in the fanzine. So I did that and ran it in the fanzine. Then she wanted to print a book of Spank the Monkey strips, but she didn't want to put Spank the Monkey on the cover. So we called it Shock and Spank the Monkey Boys. It's like summer special or special #1, something like that, where he talked about a whole bunch of different things. Then a few years after that, I'm working on Arrow Comics, and I am mad, totally upset at Diamond Distributors. So I said, hey, I'm going to solicit for a Spank the Monkey book. I'm going to make up stuff and send it to him. I drew up that cover, the one that you flashed up there with the two monkeys wedged in a cleavage. There you are. And I sent that to Diamond, thinking, just making stuff up. Spank wakes up in the morning. Spank loves coffee. Spank hates SUVs. Spank does this. Spank does. All the while, I was going to do an entire rant, the entire book, about how we were screwed over so many times by Diamond that we were fed up, and I was going to get out of the business, right? So I send the cover and I send the description into Diamond, and we had already gone around with Diamond in their descriptions and the previews, because there was a point where they were taking our descriptions and stripping them and editing them down to almost nonsensical words and sticking them in previews. And we were like, dude, just reprint what we send you. And they come back with, well, we can edit your submission any way that we please in those previews, any way that we want. So I solicited for a book that was it was an amazing manga book, and they stripped out every mention of the word that had any type of manga influence in it whatsoever. And that was it. I had enough. I sent them that description for the Spank book. I sent them the cover, and they loved it. And they put a big spotlight on it and sent it to Wizard, and Wizard printed it in the Wizard magazine and gave me a phenomenal quote. And everybody was going, man, I can't wait for that Spank book to come out. And I'm like, oh, great. So I ended up having to do the book in like a week and a half with everything that I had sent to them in the description. Spank wakes up in the morning. Spank drinks coffee. Spank hates SUVs. All of this stuff in Spank 1. So, and the numbers on that book were phenomenal. I mean, nice big profit. Literally kept the company alive for the next year and a half. Okay. So the issue 2 we made good money on, and I took a story out of the Spank, Shock and Spank the Monkey Boys book and expanded on it. That literally had Shock and Spank going to the strip clubs. And I have them describing there was a time in Flint that was golden, because we are literally the melting pot industry. We had all of the car industry up here. We had Buick and Chevy and all of that. We had turned into this huge basic, the middle class kind of started here with the UAW and all of that. There was a lot of disposable income. So there was a while there when the strip clubs were absolutely cherry. I mean, just phenomenal. So I did an entire issue, the second book that you popped up there, where the two of them are at a strip club that covers that part. And we did pretty good. Yeah. Spank. Yep. Keep it down. Anyway, that sold really well. And I was so wrapped up in Arrow that the third one I did real sloppy about television, and it didn't sell nearly as well. The fourth one I did about Star Wars, and it didn't quite sell as well as the second book. So decided to shut that down. And we were getting ready to close the company down because we kept getting hassles from Diamond anyway. So I ended up doing a 3-part Spank the Monkey on the Comic Market, is what I called it. There's a 3-part story that has Spank as a retailer, and he's talking about all the hassles he's got with retailers. Then at the end of the first issue, Shock comes up to him and tells him that they have to go where the real money is, and that's in self-publishing. So the start of the second book has Spank looking at this boob book submission that he's got called Battle Chicks. And he's like, dude, this is a boob book. I don't know if I want to print boob books. And then he goes into all of the experiences that I had as Arrow Comics. And then the third issue was all about the market, the situation of the market, and what I thought that we need to do in order to improve it or to change it. So it's a 3-part Spank the Monkey on the Comic Market. Had a couple of community colleges take to it and order a bunch of copies of each issue, or buy a bunch of copies off me after it was printed, and use it as instructionals in their classes, in their sequential art classes, for a few years. So that was really gratifying. So I'm currently in the middle of reworking that idea with Spank the Monkey on the Comic Market, where I go in and I explain the market, explain the history of comics and the evolution of the art form, the evolution of the direct market, and catch everybody up to modern times. So hopefully I'll have that out as soon as I get it done. I'm on page 40 now, and I just got up to Wonder Woman. So that shows you where I'm at.
Well, you're beating me. I'm on page 3 of my script. So
got to start somewhere. Baby steps. Make yourself little small goals and just keep making it. So I'm in the middle of a bunch of other stuff right now. I've got another book that's currently being colored. I've got the Fool campaign running, and that's just about done. I've got to do a couple pinups for it. I got one coming from Britain by Glenn Fleming did a Fool pinup for me. I got 1 or 2 more to find in order to fill that book out. So I don't like doing 28-page books. I like doing 32-page books minimum. So that's whenever I campaign, every book that we do is at least 32 pages, if not thicker. Plus, I was working for a year there for a while about my experiences while I was surviving COVID. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stalled me for a year. But I'm coming back up to this Spank book, as bad as it sounds. That doesn't sound politically correct. But my monkey book, my monkey book, I'll get back to here hopefully by within the next month or so. I've got a script I'm working on with Russ Leach where we're adapting an old sword and sorcery story that Russ really wants to do. He wants to do a barbarian book, so he's going to do that. Then after that, I want to put an Aniverse omnibus together, and but really it'll probably be me drawing cartoon monkeys for the next couple of years. Maybe, hopefully, also because I've just about got it figured out and scripted, another issue of HeroBot Zero. So fingers crossed.
Oh man, you're making me want to get to work on my project now.
Well, I've got another issue, a piece of Calico and Paragon in-house already. Calico, I just have to script, letter, and color. All the artwork's done and the book is plotted. It's fun. It's fun. Paragon second issue artwork's done for it. All I have to do is put letters on it, and it's good to go. And that's also that's a nice fun book as well. But Paragon and the Fool all fit together. I've got a superhero team that goes on that same universe, and the book that's currently being colorized by Pat Gamma, who's the same guy who colored the Fool. He's working on another darker tone, more horrific book for me that fits into the same universe as well. So
no, you're inspiring me to get to work this weekend on my script.
Baby steps. I'm telling you, just make a goal, set up with some things to do, a things to do list. I don't know how much of my situation Luke's told you, because you know what Luke went through. I went through about the same thing, only a little bit lighter. I was down with COVID. I was under on the respirator for 6 weeks and had to relearn how to do everything. And I died twice on the table. Luke died once. I beat him by by one. I died twice. Had the big mucky muck of the hospital come by going, we don't know why you're alive. But you are. So congratulations, and we'll see you later. You know, that's pretty much the conversation that I had with him. It's like, you died twice and you came back. I don't know why. This is most people in your situation all go one way and we expect them to go that way. And that's the way they usually always go. But you didn't. And you did it twice. So they sent me around to all of the doctors afterwards and, you know, pretty much got a clean bill of health, but it took a couple of months to get back to it. But back at it now. People said I come back for a reason. I said, if I did, it's to do comics. So here we go. And to keep Arrow running.
Oh, we're glad you're alive.
That's what we do. Ralph, one of the founders of Arrow, wasn't as fortunate. He ended up passing from lung problems that were aggravated by COVID. And as he was passing, I told him I was resurrecting Arrow and for another deal that ended up going south that we don't have to talk about. But that brought,
it's up to you.
That brought Arrow back. I won't keep you on the air that long. And Ralph said, take that Arrow comics and run it as far and as long as you can. So that's what we're doing. We're going to be doing Arrow comics until we can't. So,
and then obviously, I mean, not to go into that bad deal, but obviously a bunch of books were printed, and that's sort of how that deal went.
Full production, and a bunch of books were printed. Yeah.
But you weren't alone. There was.
There were nine titles total. I was responsible for 4. Yeah.
I know J.D. Rosario was in there.
Yep.
J.D. Calderon was in there. Luke Stone was in there.
Yep.
Well,
Luke was. That's how Luke found Arrow. Luke wanted to come over and be printed under the Arrow banner. So, and then Anthony Figueroa was in that too. Wolfpack.
Yeah, that's the one I'm missing.
Hand. Yeah.
I don't know Anthony at all. In which obviously I know you. I know J.D. I know J.D. Calderon. I know Luke well.
Okay.
But I don't know Anthony at all. But it's just our circles just never met. And
that's part of the fun of podcasting, though. We end up running across each other from all over the place. That's why I do the show early in the morning. It's because it's mid-morning over in England, where Russ and Glenn are. So 5 a.m. my time's 10 a.m. their time. So they're just past, morning breakfast. Sit and talk comics for a few hours. Absolutely.
But yeah, no, it's crazy. And obviously I met you on that now problematic child is a good way to put it.
Yeah. Well, they're not broadcasting anymore. There's a lot of podcasts out there that aren't podcasting anymore, but
it's a tough industry. It's a very tough industry. And I mean, I'm sure you know this, and I could just tell where I started way before all this. And then I went live because I realized that people were getting screwed over. And I thought, and I don't think I'm alone, I thought COVID was going to be 2 months at the most. I thought I was going to do maybe 20 interviews and then it'd be back to business. That's what I thought.
It's got to flatten the curve. Yeah.
That's what I thought. I thought it was going to be a blip. It turns out it wasn't.
Yeah.
But I don't think I'm wrong on that. I don't think that's an ignorant thing.
No.
I just thought it was going to play that way.
Yep.
Then I just continued to do it because people were getting screwed and wrestlers were getting screwed. Mm-hmm. And I had all these people on my show who then started podcasts after me.
Mm-hmm.
And, you're like, hey, can you give me some advice? Gave some people advice. And then 6 months later, they released 10 episodes and then they stopped.
Yep.
And because people don't realize how hard it is to do a show. Any show, even if you're just talking on Sundays to nobody out in space, live on Facebook Live.
Yep.
It is hard to do it, and it is hard to be consistent. Mm-hmm. And it is unbelievable anybody who does it. Yeah. And if you can do 2, 3, 4 shows a week, God bless you, because it is tough and it takes a hell of a lot to do it. So that's why people stop.
I only do 2, one on Friday morning, one on Sunday morning, unless I'm invited on programs like yours. So I'll be on JD's program this week too. He's got a topic about publishing. I think he wanted me on there for. So, but I'll be there Sunday night. But most of the time it's only Friday and Sunday mornings. Couple hours sitting around talking about what we love. It's easy to do. You just forget anybody's out there unless they pop up in the chat and just talk about the stuff that you love. That's part of the fun of the programs.
See, I love this show because I get to talk to voice actors, and these are the people that I was listening when I was 6, 7 years old.
Sweet.
And so more than and wrestlers, I watch a lot of wrestling. So when I'm interviewing a wrestler, I see you on TV, and there you go. And then, I'm speaking to people in comics. So how bad can it be?
Exactly.
This show isn't hard. It's not an adversarial show.
Yeah.
I mean, it's meant to be a fun time and a good time. And you know what it is? I get to talk to really cool people all over the world.
Yeah.
And but I have actually, that's not true. I did speak to somebody from Africa because Egypt's in Africa technically. But I need to speak to somebody down. That's like the one where I want more creators from Africa, the continent, because that's the one thing that I have not touched heavy. But beyond that, so
they're out there. They're just in a different time zone. So
it's just finding them, because when I find one, I will find them all.
Yeah, there you go.
It's like one ring to unite them, right?
Yep. There's a big comic contingent out of South Africa. A lot of folks doing some pretty interesting stuff down there.
They're really big into Dombe down there. It's crazy. It's a crazy sport. I was watching some of it because my friend Roderick Curtis has a book on it. It's a crazy sport, but I digress. I digress because that's not what anything you've touched is about. So,
not a sports guy, but I'm into comics, so
I'm into everything. It's a problem. It's
nothing wrong with being curious. It just adds to your art. So there you go.
But then again, the NBA playoffs are going on right now, so it's exciting to watch it, especially when you have money on the game. But that's not the point.
Nope.
But anyway,
that's going to be my next book after Spank the Monkey at the comic market. It's Spank the Monkey at the casinos.
I'm looking forward to that.
It'll be a well-researched book. So,
oh my God, so many things I could say that are so inappropriate about that.
I hear you.
Just imagine that.
It'll be fun.
Blackjack table in so many ways, so many jokes.
It's a lot to show. There's a lot to know. So yeah.
But I'm going to give you a chance to promote yourself in 1 second. But I am curious where you feel the industry is going, because we've been circling around that whole question, and I'm curious where you think it is going in 2 minutes or less.
I don't have a definitive answer for you, but it's going in a lot of very interesting directions. It all depends on who out there wants to raise the art form to a level of respect, like I said before, and look at it as an actual business as opposed to a stepping stone or an IP farm, because it started out secondhand to start with. I mean, they like I said, they just threw collections of comic strip reprints on the stands just to sell them, just to keep their presses wet. But it is an art form, and there should be all sorts of different types of comics. And I hope that, and I don't mean to trumpet diversity or inclusion, but it's an art form that ought to be and has been. Even back when they were aiming at a specific demographic, you were seeing that coming already down the line. X-Men was a multinational, multicultural cast by the time anybody realized that, hey, this could actually be a statement about prejudice and racism. Yes, let's go there. Let's tell our stories. Let's go out there and learn how to tell a good story from your own personal viewpoint. And anything you bring to the table is a different perspective that, quite frankly, deserves to be heard. And I hope that the market expands, but I can't tell you how that's going to happen. I think there's going to be a couple of interesting ways that are going to pop up. Just a day or so ago, Viz announced that they were opening up another platform to go with their Shonen Jump platform. That'll open up tens of thousands of more pages. So for like $3 a month, you can get all the Shonen Jump and all the Viz material, access to them for the month at tens of thousands of pages. Crazy. And it's coming the same way. There's so many comic strips out there, so many comic books out there, so much accessible material out there that who knows where it's going to go. The market has blown up so much with crowdfunding. Who knows where that's going to go? I'm really looking at fundmycomic.com as expanding out, because they're trying to give the geek side of things, comics, prose, books, RPGs, that miniatures, that whole era or area, a level of respect and a place for folks to crowdfund
I think Luke is doing something
their
very
material.
cool.
I think he's doing a great service.
And the other thing that I think is doing a good job is Zoop. I think
Yeah.
Zoop is actually underrated and underappreciated
Okay.
because Zoop is curated.
I
And I
think you're going to see, you might even see a couple more platforms like that come up. Global Comics, I think, is an interesting step forward that folks should probably look at or pay attention to, that they could end up being the Shonen Jump platform or digital equivalent, which I really think that they're going to get to. There's some really interesting, incredibly professional looking work coming out of there. There's just so many different avenues to go down. I want to see the cheap newsprint books come out like Peter Simeti does. Alterna only have a lot wider range. There's still plenty of room at that grocery store rack as you go to the checkout. Archie tried to play around with some Marvel Digest a little while ago, and their reprints got to be a little sketchy in places, but I thought that they did a pretty competent product. Now they're doing original stuff inside their digest. That's always fun. There needs to be more newspapers out there, comic strip papers, even with subscription service. I've been a consultant on a couple of projects that are working towards that, doing a regular, just like a comic strip news, I think it was called, or the Menominee Falls Gazette, which was out for decades, that sold a newspaper of all comic strips that were beautiful at a subscription service. I think you're going to see a little bit more of that as the niche market opens up a little harder. Who knows? The sky's the limit, but I can't tell you where it's going to go, but I'm sure I'm excited to see it. I can't wait to see it or to get there. Personally, I think once I do the Spank books, I want to kick out something that looks like a chick publication that is inexpensive. I used to have one sitting up here. That's why I'm looking. Little thin comics they used to give away at truck stops that were biblical, that were religious. Want to see a few people do those that are just nonsensical. That would be hilarious to go to the truck stop and, get a little mini comic on how to use a bathroom plunger or something, something bizarre. That would be great. But who knows? Who knows where things are going to go next? You just have to sit back, keep your eyes open, and wait for it. So I hope that was an answer, or probably a non-answer to your question.
There's no right or wrong answer. I don't. This is not a test.
I don't have a crystal ball to say, hey, tomorrow, there's going to be a revamp of Squirrel Girl that's going to be hot. But
no. I find it interesting because it serves me on two purposes. A, I'm just curious because I'm going to be entering this space anyhow, whether it's this year or next year, and so I just like other people's opinions because they're helpful to me. And secondly, I'm in this space as a retailer / collector / reseller on eBay. And so I pay attention, and I ask almost every creator this, and everybody, both on the art side, indie, and professional side, because I want to know what you guys think, to be quite honest. And I think a lot of people do as well. And I've heard every answer, and nobody has the same answer.
Yeah, there's just no magic formula to it. But I just want to see and read a bunch of great comics by a bunch of great creators. I don't care what their background is, or as long as their viewpoint is different and they can take me to a place I haven't been to before, I want to read it.
I just want entertaining stories that take me out of a bad day or just make me escape. I'm in the middle of reading Fables again for its 20th anniversary, and it's great. It's great. It's aged really well. Obviously, certain things are dated, but even still, it's a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant book.
Yeah.
And it's the nice big collection. It's almost everything in that whole thing, minus the Cinderella stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think, it's like 2 or 3 other stories, but it's great. And it's good stuff. And it's a great story. And read 4 or 5, issues at a time. And that's great. It's beautiful art. And that's what I want. And I want like a modern day Fables. That's what I'm looking for right now. And I'm just looking for a good story, and I'm looking for it to come out on time. And I'm looking for like 2 issues a year from people, which I understand might be a lot to ask. I understand, but 2 or 3 issues, if somebody gave me an issue every 4 months in indie, I'd be beyond thrilled, and I would pay more for it.
Yeah.
I would pay an extra like $3 or $4 for it, and I wouldn't even complain. But
I would love to get to that point where I'm kicking out a regular property on a regular basis. That would be And that's something that Russ says that he would love to do. Russ Leach, he'd love to get on a book for a long period of time. He thought he was going to be. He does the European version of Batman for Panini, and he did 10 episodes of that. And then he called up for the next script, and they told him that they rescinded or surrendered the license. So he's like, "Oh, really? Oh," because he was so into doing. It was on his bucket list to do Batman, and here he got to do it. So, and he does some incredible work. Me, I just want to keep telling stories. I don't ever plan on retiring from doing this. I just want to be read and enjoyed. And if I know I entertain people or inspire people, or because I used to teach before the bug hit, I used to teach cartooning after school. I've got a project now that I'm just finishing up on, where I've got a team of superheroes called the Preservers that teach conservation and preservation to kids. Our local nature preserve has me do a trail for them every year that consists of a half a dozen or a dozen to a dozen and a half signs that they end up taking, and they display it around the park. So you have to walk this mile-long trail, and you get a superhero story and a little education at the same time.
Cool.
Then every year they stick it together into a book. The latest trail I did had to do with all of the history of Michigan and the history of the state and the history of the nature preserve. And it was a lot of fun to do. And that's the next commercial project that I get to do, is another book like this that they give those away at the, they're done in newsprint. They're done really inexpensively and great reproduction. They look like old comic books. Those old comics you used to get in the 60s and 70s, only with better color. They give them away at their welcome center. You come in, they go, "Hey kid, you want a comic book? Here you go." And it's just a blast to do. And I get paid advertising rates to do it. So it's all good. So that's part of the fun. If you want to do comics, go out there and figure out a way to do it and make a little money in it. And you never know where it'll take you. They found me because I did that newspaper. They contacted me up out of the blue and say, "Hey, we've got our nature preserve over here would like to do a set of superheroes. You think you'd be interested?" Because they talked to somebody who was teaching a college course in sequential art, and they just couldn't deliver. But here I was doing a monthly newspaper. I went in for 2 hours and sat in front of them and sketched out all of their characters for them right in front of them. So it's a blast to do. It's awesome. A lot of fun. We've been working on them ever since. Working on the 6th comic right now. So they've been around for years at this point. We were at an episode of Treehouse Masters on Animal Planet too. They come out and built a treehouse that they turned into the Preservers headquarters. That was a fun time. So I'm on that episode for like 10. Personally, I'm on it for like 10 seconds. You can see my profile, and then I'm gone. But my work and the Preservers are all over the episode. So that's what counts.
That's crazy. It's
fun. Always fun. Awesome. You never know where this will take you. Yet, like I said, with the market, I've done advertising work, real estate magazines. I've done caricatures for different businesses that they've used and animated, and it just all sorts of. It just takes you wherever you want to take it.
That's wild. It's a vast world. That's all I'm going to say.
But look at the example, like Neil Adams did advertising work for years, and all sorts of advertising work in every direction. Did comic book, 1-page advertisements. Remember those old Hostess ads that Marvel used to run with the superheroes talking about how great Hostess pies were? There's all sorts of opportunities like that out there. You just got to find them.
No, it's a vast world. It's a vast world. And
we are the creative ones. We're in the alternative and independent market. So we need to be alternative and independent and go out there and think creatively, marketing wise, book wise, IP wise, and every direction possible. And just take this art form to its limits.
I agree that that's what people should be doing. The question is that do people really want to do that?
If they love it, they'll keep doing it.
Yeah,
you get that first book printed, you get it in your hands. That pretty much is when you decide right then. I know it was for me back in 85. The first, actually it was before that. It was probably 84, early 85. I had a short story printed in a fanzine called Just Imagine Comics and Stories. It's where a lot of people had a lot of work printed through that fanzine at the time. Guy saw my work, saw it was cartoony, and said, "You need to send me a story. You draw bizarre stuff. Just do something up and send it to me." So I did it, and they sent it. And first time you hold it in your hands, it's like holding your kid the first time, for the first time, right then and there, if you're going to love it the rest of your life. And if you're going to be in this business in one form or another until you can't. That's me. So while I was laying there in bed, I got me a bucket list of stuff, I was thinking about that I didn't get a chance or need to get a chance to do. And that's what I'm doing. So you're seeing it coming out now.
I know that day in your life. I know that day.
That was a good 6 months right there. I went down October 13th. I woke up November 22nd and couldn't move, totally paralyzed. So I could barely move my eyes. I remember the nurse shaking me, my shoulder, and telling me I had a visitor, and my wife looking in on me all concerned. And I'm like, I just went into the emergency ward to get some antibiotics because I was feeling the infection running, or the virus running down into my chest. And then next thing I knew, I was waking up after being on the respirator and almost dying twice and not being able to move. I got me a good little scar out of it for whatever reason, and little couple of scars, one in the throat where they trached me, and one on my stomach where they fed me with a tube for months until they decided I could swallow on my own, after I knew I could swallow for, on my own for months before that. Didn't have my first real meal until the first of the year. 2022. Yeah. So the whole last part of 2021, I was, dealing and recovering from this stupid, the stupid virus.
We're happy you're still with us.
Me too. And I was working on a book. So the first thing I could do as soon as I could move my hand is I asked for a pencil and a piece of paper, and the physical therapist come out and I drew a cartoon dog in front of her, to her astonishment, because I could barely move my arms at the time. I sat there and drew a cartoon dog, and she says, "You're not supposed to be able to do that yet." And I says, "It's all hand-eye coordination. I'm just getting it back." So it's all muscle memory, and I have to draw some more. So you can see the progression. I did 2 or 3 cartoons a day, one of which I tried to be a little goofy cartoon that kept my spirits up. But after a while, it just turned into a long set of editorial cartoons about my mistreatment at the hospital. So it was a learning experience, I'll tell you that.
Believe me, I had a surgery on the 22nd. And so I am very nervous about being knocked out. So I was nervous going in, not liking to not be in control. Mm-hmm. So they give it to me, and we're going to give you the good stuff. They start knocking me out. I don't remember anything after 30 seconds that they start administrating it to me.
Yeah.
And then I just go down. Apparently, my parents say goodbye to me, but I was out of it. Mm-hmm. And then they just wheel you in. But it didn't look like a hospital with my surgery where it took place. Then I'm wheeled back in, and I thought I dozed out for 10 minutes. Turns out it's 4 hours later. I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Because
they gave you the really good stuff. That's what that was. Yeah. Heck yeah. But I've got cancer runs in the family. So I've gone in for a few colonoscopies, and it got to the point where I asked to see the anesthesiologist. Now it's just routine, at least for my hospital. But I always tell the anesthesiologist, I am twice as heavy as you think I am. Says, and I want to have that gas. I want to be counting down from 100. And at 98, the next thing I know, I'm waking up a half an hour after the procedure's done. And the last the last 2 or 3 times, that's the best. Yeah.
They didn't even give me the gas. It was just some drugs. And it was just
yeah. Yeah. The science on that has grown so much thanks to fentanyl. So when I went down on the respirator, they gave me a list of stuff. I was groggy for 2 weeks in a different, my reality was completely altered. And while I was on the respirator, I had the craziest, most lucid dreams I ever had in my life. I was sure all of this stuff actually happened, and that I had gone through this really crazy trip where I had gone all the way out to the West Coast and back, and spent different and visited different places, did different things in different places. I swore it happened. But
So
no, I never even left Flint. Never left the hospital.
I didn't have that. I just didn't feel my leg after my surgery for 4
I
days.
got to see Taylor Swift get married. Spent some time with her Asian family. It was great. But I also got involved in a game show like American Gladiators, where they stuck us in a capsule in a fetal position and pumped the capsule full of gas, had a plunger in front of it, and then they had a guy in like radiation suits grab the capsule on a big string and slam it up against another capsule, and whichever one didn't blow up won. And I went through that twice.
I didn't have any of this.
And I remember it like it actually happened. That's crazy.
I didn't have any of that. All I know is that I just didn't feel my leg, and I was like, okay. But I felt my Achilles tendon because I did Achilles lengthening.
Wow.
And the whole problem is that what wound up happening is that I couldn't like put my leg straight because all the weight was on the Achilles tendon. So I was trying to lift it up, and then when I started hanging it off the bed, no pain. It was like the weirdest thing and that was for 2 weeks.
Wow.
But I didn't have any grogginess. It's whatever, and I'm now learning how to re-walk on my feet, so on my foot.
Oh yeah, that's a whole education in and of itself.
For those who are interested, my foot, everybody's foot is usually flat. My foot for the last like 10 years has been walking at an angle.
Okay.
So this side of my foot has never been down, and now it is because of my surgery. So I'm learning how to re-walk on it, and like it's the weirdest thing when you're putting weight on. Oh, it's so weird, but I digress. So I have sympathy for what you've been through, where clearly it is not the same, but I understand what it means to relearn things, what it means to rehab, what it means to go through, because I'm going through it right now.
Well, so I had every muscle in my body atrophy out, and I had to relearn how and reawaken everything. And thankfully, real early on, I wiggled my toes. And I knew when I was able to wiggle my toes and wiggle my fingers that I was going to get it all back. It's just a matter of time, or else I would have really freaked out.
The day about 4 days in, when I started wiggling my toes, I was like, okay, it was only a little bit, but I was like, okay,
it's all you need.
It's a weird thing, but like it freaks you out. Like I did 6 interviews right after my surgery, and I was joking saying I'm gonna be like Uma Thurman, right? Because from Kill Bill, and I said, I'm working on it, guys. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
But I thought it was funny, and I still think it's funny, but the wiggling the toe things is so important. It
is. When I had my first shower and was able to see my legs, that was the most distressing time for me because it looked like a chicken bone. My legs did. And I'm a big guy. And I looked at them and I could see, it was thick at the top, then thin, then thick towards the knee. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to walk again. Look at this. I'm nothing. And it came back. I lost 100 pounds between going in for COVID and going to the nursing home for the full physical and occupational therapy. I lost at least 100 pounds. And I was still losing weight when I got to the nursing home, but they turned it around by upping the mud that they were shipping into my stomach. They like quadrupled it until my stomach blew up like a Jiffy Pop popcorn pan. Oh, wow. I was barely able to move. And just watching the belly grow. So it's crazy times. Then once I started eating real food again, everything bounced back real quick. So that was kind of like a big turning point for me. But there was the first time they set you up after everything's been atrophied, nobody told me that there would be an adjustment. I just figured I'd just be setting up. Then they set you up. I was so disoriented. I had a panic attack and started screaming, begging to be laid back down again because it was such a weird, unusual feeling. Then I was lightheaded off and on for the next, like I said, I was fuzzed out for the next couple of weeks. I was watching the clocks move funny. I was telling the wife all sorts of crazy stories. I was tripping here and there, leaving the hospital and not really leaving at all because I couldn't move. But they pumped me with a lot of happy juice.
My first surgery 13 years ago, I was in hospital for 5 days. And I was on some serious drugs. I was on morphine, pushing a button, and when you start seeing a purple dragon flying around, you know you're in a different area.
Oh, they've got some great drugs now. Yeah.
That
I
was like
escaped
13 years ago.
I escaped the hospital because I had to go have me a Verner's, and ended up at a bar somewhere. I swear I was there. My brother come in, and he basically had to tell me that the hospital went and rearranged itself, and then set me back in. So I you're back. You're back. Oh yeah, I'm back. Okay, yeah, I'm back. But like I said, it took me about 2 weeks before I actually felt I was back in this reality 100%.
So I only had one
Just
incident 13
crazy.
years ago where I was like, you see a purple dragon just flying around. No, it doesn't say hi to you, doesn't acknowledge you. It's not threatening you. It's just flying around. And I'm like, cool. And it's like a cute sort of like fat purple dragon. And you're like, okay, this is interesting. And but this one, I didn't have anything. All I know is that I wake up and you're like mentally disturbed. And I would imagine you would have been too. It's like, oh, I must have been asleep for 5 minutes, right? And you're like, what?
Yeah.
So
that was a leap of 6 weeks there. Yeah, pretty hard.
I mean, that's how it was for me. And even still is a little disturbing. And I was out for 4 or 5 hours, because they bring you right back to the same place. And I'm in like the same place, and oh man, and my parents were in the same place. Oh, weirdest thing ever. But then I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're done here. It was pleasant because no gas. It was nice. They knocked me out not in the operating room, which was nice too. It was pleasant because it was less invasive, but I digress. Enough about that though. I could probably talk to you for hours on this just alone.
Absolutely.
Because
crazy times. Yeah.
I have sympathy and I have an understanding of what you went through.
Yeah.
In a certain way, because hospitals are not fun. I've spent enough time in them that it's not fun.
Yep. I know I never want to go back. That's for sure.
Yeah. I don't want to do my surgery ever again either.
Yeah.
I at some point I will be back in a hospital, just statistically. Sure. I am just hoping that it is for the birth of my child and not anything else.
Yep. Amen.
But I digress. I do want to give you a chance to promote yourself. Where could people bother you, find you, hit you up, disturb you, all that fun stuff?
Been doing it this whole time. Aerocomics.store. It's where you need to go. Take a look at those products over at Aero Comics. Not all of them's mine, but some of them are. HeroBot Zero, Paragon. There's a couple of the first 2 Spanks that you showed the covers of there. I've got colorized PDFs available at an inexpensive price. There's a lot more coming. There's a lot more stuff on the way. A lot of stuff in production. In May, we are premiering a book called the AR-13L, The Little Mermaid. She's a mermaid mercenary, and her crab assistant, who has a knife grafted to its claws, called Sebastian, as they go through their little mercenary adventures. So the campaign for that will be over at fundmycomics.com. That I didn't have anything to do with that other than just go, yeah, that's going to be cool. Let's put an Arrow logo on it. That's my whole involvement there. But it's going to be a great book. That's the next book to come out from Arrow. But right now, The Fool is available over at Fund My Comics for you to buy in $5 for a 32-page comic plus shipping. The adventures of a guy I call the Rodeo Clown of Justice. He's all dressed up in many different tattered rags. In fact, he usually doesn't wear the same outfit in 2 adventures, in the same adventure twice. So because he keeps picking up new stuff and adding them to his action duds. Little kid stops him on the street, asks him if he has a mutant power because he's a superhero. And he looks around, he leans over to the kid and goes, I have the mutant power to sew. And he goes running off. But all of the books are meant to be fun, entertaining. The Paragon's a superhero story. Calico's a fantasy story. HeroBot's a lighthearted, action-packed, 3-foot-tall giant robot that has an arsenal packed in his body. He's got all sorts of any kind of weapon that you can imagine he packs in that little frame as he defends his city from large monsters. It's a lot of fun. More and a lot more stuff coming, but aerocomics.store is where you can get the stuff available now. If you want to read something that I've written but I didn't draw, War of the Worlds Infestation with artwork by Horace is available through Caliber Press over on Amazon. It's a 5-issue series that's been put together into a book. I think the individual PDFs are also available for purchase as well. That's also a fun book that I'll stand by. it's still a good read. It's a nice pulpy adventure of the Martians who come down and reinvade the Earth after trying to do it 100 years before that. Only this time they've cured their little bacterial problem, so they're not going to die off as easily as in the actual novel. But we know who they are now, so it turns into more of a war. So it's War of the Worlds Infestation over at from Caliber Press, available on Amazon. Other than that, aerocomics.store. You can find all sorts of stuff over there. So go and enjoy. Plus the podcasts over on the Indie Comics Network. I do Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. The Sunday Funnies, where we talk about the stuff that inspires us, the different geekery that puts a smile on our face and helps us stay in this business that we love so much. And then Friday mornings, we do Comic by Night, where we pull out a great work and analyze it. The help of Russ and Glenn and whoever else wants to wake up early enough to join us. It's 5 a.m. on Friday mornings over on the Indie Comics Network. And we're archived over on the Indie Comics Network as well. So there's a lot of episodes over there for your listening and viewing pleasure. And if you listen to us at fast speed, you can make us sound like chipmunks. It'll be good.
Yeah, I'm just going to say it. I'm going to keep saying it. I've been saying it for almost 4 years now. You have to support indie.
Yeah.
And what that means is that when people have books on crowdfunding platforms, you should go out and support those books if you like them. It makes a huge difference, whether that's Kickstarter from my comic, Indiegogo, Crowdfunders, Zoop, wherever you get your crowdfunders. You need to go out and support people, especially when they do have books out there. And when they don't have books out there, most people have websites. And so you should buy their books at a website, or if you're at a con and you see their book, you should absolutely buy their book at a convention. Or if they don't have any of that, but they're on Facebook, I'm sure most people are happy to sell you a book. If you don't see the book and they have it, shoot them a DM, and I'm pretty sure they'll direct you to where you want to get that book from.
Absolutely.
Because it directly and indirectly supports whatever project they're working on. Yep. And it's super important. And also following people on social media in today's age is also just as important as buying people's books.
Yep.
Because that does make a difference. And engaging with people on social media
makes
a huge difference as well. Liking a tweet, liking an Instagram post, liking a Facebook post, liking a page, liking a group, joining a group, leaving a comment on an interview live or wherever you see it, subscribing on YouTube. Big deal in a lot of ways.
Yep.
It makes a huge difference. And then as far as I'm concerned, I am all over the internet. I am Pop Anime Comics on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you go on YouTube, please subscribe. I think I have almost 500 interviews now, and
Sweet.
I have all this content, and I have so much more stuff coming, and you never know who's going to be on my show and when they're going to be on my show. And I promise you, you might get smarter if you listen to me. I can't guarantee it, but I can guarantee that you will be entertained. I can guarantee you will be entertained. I don't know if you're going to be smarter, but you will be entertained. Furthermore, I do have ads that I run, so if you're interested in that, I have Buy Me a Coffee. You want to support independent media. I have a T-shirt, which helps to support this show. So if you want to check out all that, everybody, you're more than welcome to. It's not a necessity, but I do appreciate when people actually engage with me, and I do engage back. So if you leave a comment, shoot me a message, I will respond. So please do. And that's my whole thing. And on that note, I'm going to give you the final word.
I tell everybody on my shows, if you get some time, take an afternoon on a weekend, Saturday or Sunday, if your retailer is open, go visit your local comic shop and take a good look at the stock that he has, especially if he's got a wide variety, or she has a wide variety of back stock. Look at those boxes that are closest to the floor, those old magazine boxes, those old comic boxes. There are a lot of little gems sitting in there just waiting to be discovered. All you got to do is find them. And hey, your retailer is probably pretty flexible on those prices too. If you want to try to get there are good, great stories in there that can be had at pretty inexpensive prices from your local retailer, especially if it's a box that's got a little dust on it. You go in there and you dust it off for them, and you find a bunch of old Creepies or Eries or some great old Marvel black and white books or whatever. You'd be amazed at the quality of stuff that's out there. And there's so much great comic material and manga material out there just waiting to be discovered. So don't be afraid to go out there and support your local retailer and get that done. Snoop around a little bit on some of these crowdfunding platforms, because a lot of these books aren't getting the marketing and the exposure that they deserve, because the quality on those books are so great. It's a great time to be reading comics. It's a great time to be producing alternative and independent comics. Back in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, back when I first got into this business and doing this, it was next to impossible to make a living doing what you love. But now through crowdfunding, finding that audience isn't as rough as it used to be. And that audience is readers or people that are directly paying you in order to get your product. And that's what's important. So, and you get a chance, go over to fundmycomic.com, especially take a look around there, look at the Fool campaign. It's a great, fun, self-contained book. That's a great ride that I'm very proud of, and I can't wait for you to read it. It looks phenomenal in color. And the other things that Arrow Comics has got coming out are going to be just as good and quality laden as those books. On the Fool campaign, there are a couple of bundles that you can get. And the first bundle is 8 books for $50. They're all Arrow Comics. They're all number ones, and they're all different sorts of genres. Great way to get started. And the second bundle, bundle number 2, there's 6 books for $40, and that includes second issues on 3 of those from the first bundle and 3 fresh number ones. You get Chrome Dog, that with artwork by Luke Stone and written by Justin Sweet. You get Soul Tack by Craig White, which is kind of a Han Solo, great book out of Canada. And you get Fool number 1, all in that second bundle. So take a look at that as well. So other than that, if you want to reach me personally, friend me on Facebook, because I don't twit very often. I've got an Indiegogo account, and I don't go over to very often. But I'm on Facebook more than I should be. So you can always reach me there. And thanks a lot for having me on, Andrew. I appreciate it. It's been fun.
Well, I don't think I could have said that any better myself for everybody. And that is a wrap.
All right.